So, Haley, in today's episode, we're going to focus a little more specifically on your strategy around infusing creativity, ingenuity, and fun into your role at Winebow and how you market and sell Italian wine. So, our three key takeaways are going to be number one, how can we bring more creativity and fun to the marketing of Italian wine for trade but and consumers? Number two, what are some tangible ideas and examples of things that you find are working right now in the market for Italian wine? And finally, how are we facing some of these headwinds, tariffs, non-alcohol, no low, Ozempic of 2025 head on for Italian wine? So lots to discuss. Excited for this conversation. So let's dive in.
Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market with me, your host, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the U.S. market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests in every episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned from the episode. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us this week to learn more about the U.S. market.
Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Hayley Black to the Italian Wine Podcast. Hayley is based in Seattle, Washington, and has been in the industry for almost 20 years. She's a certified Italian wine expert with Vinitaly International Academy and also has her WSET diploma. Hayley, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much. I am excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. So for starters, Hayley, tell us a little bit more about your role and your position with Winebow, just to orient our listeners.
Absolutely. So I've been working with Winebow Imports for about 5.5 years now. Winebow is kind of one of those unique models in the US industry where, we started as an importer, we are an importer, but we also are a distributor in many states throughout the country. So I'm on the import side and I'm on a really specialized team. I'm a fine wine specialist for the company. There's only 6 of us nationally, so we're kind of spread out throughout the US. And I cover the West Coast, so 7 states, Alaska down to California and kind of the surrounding areas, I like to say. And our focus really is, if you ask my boss, he says we take challenges and make them opportunities, but we kind of represent the upper tier, the top 20% of the portfolio. So items that are allocated, higher revenue, and also more hand sells, really kind of esoteric or unique regions of the world. Things that require you to be in front of someone with a bottle, tasting it, that requires more of a story.
Right. Absolutely. I'd love to just start with some definitions for the listeners. But when we say fine wine specialist for an importer, what does that role typically entail? Is it a direct sales role or more of an educator? How do you define that role, at least for yourself and your position?
Absolutely. So it is, I like to say, an overlay role where it kind of encompasses multiple things. So it is sales on the ground. I almost say that it's direct marketing on the ground in a sales form, right? So a lot of it will include events and activations, special trade tastings or consumer events, a lot of education within our wholesalers, and then also within our wholesale team. And then background as well. So creating materials that will help people and our partners.
And I think, like you said, for those specialized Italian, more esoteric wines, what an important role to have that education. And like you said, that on the ground sales and marketing opportunities. So that's awesome. So Haley, in today's episode, we're going to focus a little more specifically on the U.S. market, of course, title of this podcast, and the challenges, which there are many that we're facing, but specifically for Italian wine. And we're going to focus more specifically on your opinion and your strategy around infusing creativity, ingenuity, and fun into your role at Winebow and how you market and sell Italian wine. So our three key takeaways are going to be number one, how can we bring more creativity and fun to the marketing of Italian wine for trade but and consumers? Number two, what are some tangible ideas and examples of things that you find are working right now in the market for Italian wine? And finally, how are we facing some of these headwinds, tariffs, non-alcohol, no low, Ozempic of 2025 head on for Italian wine? So lots to discuss. Excited for this conversation. So let's dive in. For starters, Haley, talk to us a little bit about how you're approaching this year differently in your role at Winebow.
Absolutely. So I think I've always approached my role somewhat differently, but particularly this year and even towards the end of last year, right? We're seeing challenges in the market, but I think the first thing that I like to talk about is positivity. And you brought it up, fun. So it's something that we talked about when we tried to decide what to discuss today. And, you know, when you look at wine, when you look at our industry, one of my favorite things when I first started learning about wine was I read a quote from Oz Clarke, and he said, "Wine is meant for happiness." And when you look at it historically over time, that really is an important point to focus on, no matter what you're doing, sales, sommelier. And so I'm really trying to focus on that in everything that I do this year is how do we bring happiness to people, whether it is a consumer, whether it is trade, whether it is my suppliers. And then from there, how do you actively promote it and at the end sell it? Right. So
Right.
I think that positivity and happiness piece is something that often gets forgotten, especially in sales, right? There's competition, there's all of these things in the market. So, first and foremost, that is kind of the approach. And then being kind of unique in what we're doing. So, how do you stand out? How do you make a point of difference in the market that still provides a service for whoever you're working with, whether it is our wholesale partners or the trade directly or the end consumer. So being the best service in that regard.
And I really love that human approach you mentioned around starting with positivity and happiness, right? I think we can all use a little bit more of that in this day and age, especially with the headwinds we're facing, not just as a wine industry, but just what's going on politically, globally. So I really appreciate that approach. And I think it's something really valuable to think about. Maybe more tangibly, like what's something you're doing day to day in order to bring more happiness and positivity to work? Like, what are some ways in which you're infusing that into your day to day?
Great question. I think, when you look at tangible efforts in the market, it's really about building brand ambassadors around you. So in this kind of like doom and gloom, I feel like that we're talking about and facing a lot when I'm in market, it's shifting the conversation, whether it's with someone I'm working with, one of my wholesale partners, like if I'm in their car, shifting the conversation to the things that we we're passionate about, and then how we translate that passion when we're at an account with a trade buyer, or how we translate that passion to the consumer. And I think the other big tangible pieces is, we are all wine nerds to a certain degree in this industry. That's kind of how it started. And I think we've swung the pendulum a bit far, and we've made it almost too unapproachable for a lot of people. So it's almost depending on where you are and who you're with, it's making things approachable and fun in a certain way. So whether it's comparing, wine to something that is more understandable to someone, or it's doing something like potato chip and wine tasting. So where we're tasting Brunello and potato chips, which is something that you would never think of, right? But something that helps people find an approachability to it.
Yeah, I love that. Brunello and potato chips. What was the best pairing in that tasting?
Well, we did a bunch of different Italian wines with the potato chips, and actually, it was really hard. We were trying to figure out how to pair Doritos, the Cool Ranch Doritos, which is just like wild, weird flavors, with wine. And the best pairing was just like a Valpolicella Superiore, just that cherry
Mm.
with kind of like the spice and Cool Ranch. So that was actually my most fun pairing of the lineup. Yeah, you can do a lot of different things with potato chips. And I also am just I love chips. So or crisps, I should say, about Italian wine.
Chris.
So crisps.
Yes. Who doesn't? But yeah, I mean, I think, Haley, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's like having more fun with these wines, introducing them to people in maybe unexpected ways that are more approachable, especially for the consumers out there. I mean, Italian wine is vast, we know, and complicated. And I think also for the somms, I mean, there's a lot of new somms out there on the floor in their early 20s and their mid 20s that are still learning about wine that wine can be daunting. We have to figure out ways to make it fun and memorable. And yeah, what could be more fun than chips and Brunello? So I love that approach. And Haley, you've been on the buyer side before your role at Winebow. So how did that experience working as a buyer in retail and restaurants inform your approach today and your role with Winebow?
That's also a great question. I live in a unique area when you think about competition in wine, right? So I'm based in Seattle, and I sell imports now, right? But they make amazing wine here in Washington state. And I also work in California, which is the same case. So I think there's a unique note on the West Coast where, as a buyer, when you're putting together a list for a restaurant, you're trying to support the local market, the domestic palate, and then also have this really well rounded list that represents the world of wine that's included in that. But a lot of your people coming into the restaurant are also wanting to try something locally or try something, of the area that they're at, whether it's California or Washington. So you do have a unique competition added there with Italian wine list or an import list. And so considering that, I think that's always something that I consider now in my role is the space is probably more limited on these lists or maybe on these shelves, or the competition, you're always going to be kind of, instead of looking at it as a competition to the local market, how do you appease that palate to a certain degree? What kind of wines maybe are good parallels? Or how do you educate and get them to try something? Because a jump from like a Bordeaux blend in Washington state to a Barolo is a huge flavor and palate jump. And you also may not have a
Right.
sommelier on the floor anymore. You might not have support on the floor in the same way. So just figuring out, is it, staff trainings, offering extra services that have always existed, but knowing that they might need more of that support
Mhm.
now than ever. So being able to do that or create materials or do tastings, whether it's a floating winemaker dinner or you're there to help kind of pour and not even pour, but just talk to tables and offer that support, has been really successful in certain instances.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, Haley, for the West Coast, not only are you competing against all other imports, you have a whole local wine market. Like you mentioned, that you have to be cognizant and aware of that, it's selling, what's that saying? It's like selling ice to an Eskimo, that it's not something necessarily they need. So it's finding that right balance of giving them a comparison, giving them something interesting, but also again providing that education to allow them to integrate it into their wine program. What would you say are some ways in which, maybe our listeners, many of who represent Italian wineries in Italy, can do on their side to help make this daunting task easier for their US partners and importers and distributors?
I would say access is always a great thing. When someone is looking for information, like we have information at our fingertips now, right? So have a good website or something really accessible so where people can get information quickly. I think that's a huge thing, a really helpful thing. Spending time in market, I always say yes. The market is flooded with a lot of people, but presence in the market and being your best self. So keeping in mind, whatever you're doing, if you're going to visit a market, you're creating those brand ambassadors for your brand, but also for you. So whether you're the winemaker or the family member or the producer, or maybe you're the importer, the brand manager or what have you, when you're sitting in that car with someone, they're listening to you, they're paying attention to how you act, they're paying attention to how you treat people, they're paying attention to how you talk about the wines, and your passion is going to be infectious, right? So just keeping in mind your presence is so helpful and so impactful. And it also goes back to that idea, if you are in a market where there's a lot of domestic producers, those producers are seen in restaurants a lot, right? Those producers are seen in the market a lot. So you coming, even if it's once a year, and being really impactful makes a difference. And you can't be here all the time. So when you can't, you can provide accessibility to those people so they can find you, whether it's a good Instagram page or a good website, being able to have good materials that give the information that people need, that are out there selling your wine.
Yeah, it might sound like a basic thing, website and Instagram and materials, but it's so critical and so important. So something to really make sure you're investing in and you dedicate the resources to building out, those materials. Haley, you're also mentioned earlier an Italian wine expert. through VIA. Talk to us a little bit. Many of our listeners are part of the VIA community as well. How has that program impacted, your work at Winebow, and what was your experience in the VIA program like?
Absolutely. Yeah, I did VIA in 2016. So it's been some time. It's crazy how time flies. But VIA is an incredible community. I think that's the first thing. It's incredibly challenging program and exam, but it's so rewarding for the journey that it takes you through. I think when people land on VIA, it's because they have a certain passion for obviously wine, but Italian wine and culture, not just the wine, but also the culture. And the whole process of it really connects you on a global level. And outside of that connection, when you're taking the course, going through the process of learning, taking the exams, you stay connected with everyone. And it's this community that has kind of grown over the years and stayed in touch and networks together, really helps each other out outside of just exams and schoolwork, right?
Hmm.
What are your challenges in this market? What are your challenges in this market? How are you overcoming them? People really talk and help each other. And
Yeah.
it kind of has grown this really special place that I think is quite unique to our industry and really, really special. So I've loved that piece of VIA as
Right.
far as my experience after becoming an expert. I feel I've had the opportunity to really kind of travel and work with a lot of incredible people, knowledgeable people, people that have been in the industry for quite some time, people that are new to the industry. And really, I think the biggest thing is, I always tell when people are doing VIA, ambassador is the hard part. Expert is like where you get very niche, but
Hmm.
just going through that ambassador, that's 90% of it, right? That's a huge, huge piece of the program. And just the process of it alone just makes you much more confident and stronger and able to really speak to Italian wine and wine as a whole in a very specialized way, which is creates a lot of confidence just in the industry as a whole.
Right. And like you said earlier too, when you're selling these geekier wines, it's like having that knowledge base and those other people that are passionate about it as well makes such a big difference. So just the proliferation of the community has been really cool to see. And I love too that it's national. I mean, you've got Italian wine ambassadors and experts really around the country. It's not like it's concentrated only, in New York where I am. You're in Washington. I know there's a big community in California, Las Vegas, really all over, which is really, really cool to see.
Yeah, and we all really work together, try to stay in touch to that degree too. When I was in Las Vegas and Nevada actually working last week and connected with three different ambassadors. So, and they're all in the industry to a certain degree too. So it's how can we partner and help, Italian wine as a whole to be successful or more successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Haley, as we wind down, I did want to talk a little bit about, we mentioned at the start of this conversation, tariffs, non-alc, Ozempic, all these headwinds that we are facing as an industry right now. What are some of the challenges that for you are most top of mind in your day to day out of the many that are out there right now?
Absolutely. I know. I think we can all perseverate on tariffs, but we're just kind of, you can make preparations, but also I've been really kind of focused on, how you take this non-alcoholic, low alcohol sort of movement, or even this movement of just people that are uninterested in wine and look at it as, an opportunity, right? So I'm not saying everybody making wine make non-alcoholic wine. Please don't do that. But it's something I was actually thinking about a lot recently. I was at a cocktail bar. A lot of cocktail bars are now listing cocktails in order of ABV, like
Right.
no ABV, low ABV, right, to higher ABV drinks. I don't think that's going to happen for wine anytime soon because it's too niche in that regard. But
Hmm.
I think that's really an awesome opportunity for us because you look at someone, I live 30 miles outside of the city and I live in a place where I have to drive. Like public transit is just non existent really in Seattle. And so I go out and I want to be social, and a lot of people do, right? Let's say I'm out with someone that's, younger than me, my best friend's younger sister who's in her early 20s. We go out, we're having a social time, you get a cocktail, and then this is a great opportunity to like lead into a wine beverage where you can take something that is higher alcohol and then go to something that's lower alcohol. Or maybe you have a mocktail and then you have a glass of wine. So it's trying to figure out how things fit into how the new world or setup of things are working. And I think there's plenty of opportunity. And I don't think also everyone's stopping drinking. It's more how you fit wine into that piece, if they're going to have one glass while they're out, or are
Right.
they drinking at home. And it goes back to that overall approachability of our industry. How do we make things approachable and easy for people to understand that don't understand wine right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think continuing to focus on those stories and the authenticity that wine brings to the table, which is something that's super important for this next generation. So that's something that we're thinking about as a whole right now is, we've been doing trade tastings that are 80s and 90s themes where we're hiring DJs and encouraging people not to wear, their blacks or their suit that they have to wear to work to our trade tasting. Like, come, have fun, taste wine, learn about it, give them a different environment, because all these new buyers are those people too that are trying to learn and understand where wine fits into their program. So making it fun for them too. And we've seen double-digit growth in markets that we've done those sort of trade events in.
Wow.
Um,
Very cool.
so it's really, I think, kind of again shifting that mentality of doom and gloom and all these things we can worry about is what are things we can shift or change for people that we are worrying about. So
Mm-hmm.
giving more opportunities to people and not over explaining something or getting too nerdy, but giving an opportunity to people enter into the wine world in a different way than maybe we did.
Right. I love that idea of like making the tastings. We're drinking wine after all, so make them feel more fun for people. And then also what you said about the non-alc space, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think it's not going away, so let's figure out how we're integrating it. I don't think people are necessarily all or nothing. We know the younger consumer and our multi-category drinkers where they're drinking beer, spirits, and wine, and now you're adding non-alc into that pie. So it's not that they're not drinking wine, but they are probably drinking a little less, and they are exploring mocktails. But it's figuring out how your brand fits into the equation and how you can speak to the buyer as well. So absolutely, and I again, Hayley, really appreciate, and I'm sure our listeners will too, your really positive approach to some of these challenges. So as we wind down, we'll do our rapid fire Q&A. So if you can do your best to answer these questions in just a couple of sentences, that would be great. Question number one. What is your number one tip for mastering the U.S. wine market?
Be flexible. So every part of the US is a little bit different. Be open to doing something new. The scenery has shifted, right? We've talked a lot about that today. And be authentic and positive, right? You're creating brand ambassadors of you and what you're selling. So people are paying attention to how you act in market for sure.
Absolutely. Great advice. Number two, what is something you might have told your younger professional self about selling Italian wine in the U.S.?
Oh man, that's a hard one. If I look back at my younger self, I was like the extreme nerd, right? I was the Via Italian wine expert, learning all the different clones of Sangiovese and Nebbiolo. And those don't maybe necessarily make sense when you're selling wine or marketing wine in the US market. They give you some definite confidence. So I would tell my younger self, if you're selling wine, you're again going to have to be flexible and able to kind of adjust and versatile to different people. So you might have to be a nerd at one place, and you might have to be really general, or maybe just speak to scores at another place, right? So it's not all about one thing or the other.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And finally, we're all on the road a lot. Sounds like you cover a lot of territory out there on the West Coast. So what is your favorite travel hack for when you're out working the market?
Ooh, travel hack. Okay, so this won't work for everybody, but my favorite is my heatless curler.
Oh,
So I have been seen on many planes and trains with my little heatless curler. It's like a little rod that I like wrap around my hair and it makes me look fresh if I'm on a plane for 5 hours or whatever it may be. So for all you ladies out there, heatless curler. I mean, obviously dry shampoo too, but no, that's my favorite
yes.
travel hack. And then also stuffing your socks in your shoes. If you're like me, I'm tall, I have big feet, so my shoes take up half my suitcase. The socks go in the shoes and it gives me more room in the suitcase.
Awesome. I love both of those. I need to look into that heatless curler. Well, Hayley, thank you again for joining me today on Masterclass US Wine Market on the Italian Wine Podcast. How can our listeners follow along with what you're up to out in Washington with Winebow?
You can follow me on Instagram and Places to Vino. You can see where I'm going, what I'm doing, and bottles of wine that I have open and I'm tasting. And you can also see my really cute dog, Ringo Starr. He's a corgi. So people like him too.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you again, Hayley. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you've enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.